I used to work as a security guard at St. Mary's Hospital on the night shift. It was just me and a skeleton crew, a couple nurses, one doctor, and the janitor. The pay was decent, and honestly, how hard could it be watching an empty hospital at night? That was before I learned about the fourth floor. The fourth floor had been closed for renovations for over 2 years. Budget cuts kept delaying the project, so it just sat there, empty and dark. My job was simple: walk the rounds every hour, check all the doors, make sure everything was secure. Easy money, I thought. The first few weeks were boring as hell. I'd walk my routes, maybe catch a quick nap in the security office, watch some Netflix on my phone. The only weird thing was how cold it got on the fourth floor. Even in summer, that place was freezing. I figured it was just bad ventilation in an unused building. Then I started hearing the voices. It was always around 3 a.m. when I'd do my fourth floor rounds. At first, I thought it was just pipes or the building settling. Old hospitals make weird noises, right? But these sounds were different. They sounded like conversations, multiple people talking quietly, like they were trying not to wake someone up. The voices always seemed to be coming from just around the corner, but when I'd follow them, they'd move somewhere else, always just out of reach. I started bringing a flashlight even though the emergency lighting worked fine. Something about that floor made me want as much light as possible. One night in October, the voices were clearer than usual. I could almost make out words. It sounded like a woman crying and a man trying to comfort her. Then another voice joined in, a child asking, "When can we go home?" I decided to investigate. The voices were coming from room 412, which had been a pediatric room before the floor closed. The door was slightly open, which was weird because I always checked to make sure every door was locked tight. I pushed the door open slowly and shined my flashlight inside. The room was empty except for one hospital bed in the center, but here's what made my blood run cold. The bed was made up with fresh sheets, like someone was expected to use it. There were flowers on the bedside table that looked recently placed, and sitting in the visitor's chair was a woman in a hospital gown. She looked up at me with the saddest eyes I've ever seen and said, "Have you seen my daughter? She was supposed to have surgery today, but they moved her somewhere and won't tell me where." I didn't know what to say. This woman looked solid, real, but she was translucent around the edges. I could see the wall behind her through her body. "Ma'am, this floor is closed. You shouldn't be here." She smiled, but it was heartbreaking. "I know, dear, but I can't leave without Sarah. She's only 6. She must be so scared without her mommy." That's when I heard it, a little girl's voice calling "Mommy" from somewhere down the hall. The woman's face lit up and she stood from the chair. "That's her, that's my Sarah." She walked right past me, through me actually, and I felt this wave of coldness that went straight to my bones. I followed her into the hallway, but she was gone. The child's voice was still calling though, and now I could hear more voices joining in. Dozens of them. Patients calling for nurses, children crying for their parents, old people asking to go home. I ran, left my post and ran straight to the head nurse on duty, a tough old lady named Margaret, who'd worked there for 30 years. When I told her what happened, her face went white. "You saw them too?" she whispered. "We've been trying to keep people away from that floor for good reason." She told me the truth then. The fourth floor wasn't just closed for renovations. 2 years ago, there was a fire in the electrical system. The sprinkler system malfunctioned and 12 patients died, mostly children and elderly people who couldn't evacuate quickly enough. The hospital covered it up, paid off families, and told everyone it was just being renovated. "Those people don't know they're dead," Margaret explained. "They're still waiting for treatment, waiting for their families, waiting to go home. And they're getting restless." I wanted to quit right then, but Margaret begged me to stay. Someone has to keep them contained on that floor. If they realize what happened, if they get angry, they might not stay up there anymore. So I kept working, but I changed my routine. Instead of just doing security rounds, I started talking to them. I'd bring up newspapers and magazines, tell them about what was happening in the world. I'd sit with the woman looking for her daughter and assure her that Sarah was safe. I'd read stories to the children who couldn't sleep. It worked for a while. They seemed calmer when someone acknowledged them. But last month, something changed. A new presence showed up on the fourth floor, something angry and violent that the other spirits were afraid of. Now when I do my rounds, I can hear screaming from room 408. The other spirits are hiding, whispering warnings about the burned man who's making everyone remember. I think someone's telling them the truth about what happened. And when they figure out they've been dead for 2 years, waiting in an abandoned hospital floor, I don't think they're going to be happy about it. Last night, all the elevators in the hospital kept stopping at the fourth floor on their own. The doors would open, but no one would get out. At least, not the ones the living could see. I've put in my 2 weeks' notice. Whatever's about to happen on the fourth floor, I don't want to be there when those spirits realize they've been lied to.
I answered an ad on Craigslist for a part-time job cleaning a photography studio. The pay was good, too good, actually, but I needed the money for college. The photographer, David Chen, seemed normal enough when I met him. Mid-30s, professional, had his own studio in this converted warehouse downtown. The job was simple. Come in after hours, clean the equipment, organize props, sweep, and mop. David left detailed notes about what needed to be done, and I never had to interact with clients or anything. Perfect for someone like me who just wanted to work quietly and get paid. The studio was pretty cool, actually. High ceilings, professional lighting rigs, different backdrop setups. David did all kinds of photography. Headshots, family portraits, fashion shoots. There were examples of his work all over the walls, and he was genuinely talented. But there was one room I wasn't allowed to enter. David's private dark room, he called it. Always kept locked, and he made it very clear that I should never try to go in there. Fair enough. Every photographer probably has sensitive projects they're working on. The weird thing was the smell that came from under that door. Not the usual chemical smell you'd expect from a dark room. This was something else. Something organic and unpleasant that got worse over the weeks I worked there. I started noticing other odd things too. Sometimes when I came in to clean, there'd be evidence of late-night photo shoots, lights still warm, cameras still set up, but no sign of David or any clients. Once I found a woman's purse left behind, full of cash and credit cards. I left it on David's desk with a note, but it was gone the next day. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in November. I was cleaning the main studio area when I heard sounds coming from the locked room. Not the usual darkroom noises. This sounded like someone crying. Quiet, muffled sobs, like someone was trying not to be heard. I knocked on the door. "David? Is everything okay in there?" The crying stopped immediately. After a moment, David's voice came through the door. "Everything's fine, just working on a difficult project. You can go ahead and finish up out there." But something in his voice sounded off, strained, like he was nervous about something. And I could swear I heard another voice, a woman's voice, whisper something that sounded like, "Help me." I finished cleaning quickly and left, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, I decided to do some research on David Chen. What I found made my stomach turn. There had been a series of missing person reports over the past year. All women, all in their 20s, all last seen in the downtown area where David's studio was located. The police had questioned him as part of their investigation, but nothing came of it. I also found David's social media accounts. His photography portfolio online was different from what I'd seen in the studio. These photos were darker, more artistic, but there was something disturbing about them. The models all had this look in their eyes, not posed fear for artistic effect, but real terror. That night, I made a decision that probably saved my life. Instead of going home after my cleaning shift, I hid in the supply closet and waited. I wanted to see what David was really doing in that locked room. Around midnight, I heard David come in with someone. A young woman's voice, nervous laughter, the sound of them moving equipment around, then David's voice, smooth and professional. "Just relax, this'll only take a few minutes. The lighting needs to be perfect." I waited about an hour, then crept out of the closet. The main studio was dark, but I could see light coming from under the darkroom door. And I could hear that woman's voice again, but now she sounded scared. "I want to stop now. Please, I want to go home." David's voice was different now, colder. "We're not finished yet. Hold still." That's when I heard the camera clicking rapidly, and the woman started screaming. I called 911 from my cell phone and ran outside to wait for the police. When they arrived, they found David in his darkroom with a woman who had been reported missing 3 days earlier. She was alive, but barely. Tied up, drugged, and David had been documenting what he was doing to her. The police found evidence of at least 6 other victims in that room. Photos, personal belongings, and worse things I don't want to think about. The smell I'd been noticing was from a section of the floor where he'd been disposing of remains. David is in prison now, awaiting trial. The woman they rescued survived, but she'll never be the same. And I'll never forget the look in David's eyes when the police arrested him. Not shame or fear, but anger. Like he was mad that his art project had been interrupted. The worst part is knowing that I could have saved those other women if I'd investigated sooner. If I'd trusted my instincts instead of just focusing on the paycheck. Sometimes I wake up at night thinking about the sounds coming from that room, wondering how many times I walked past someone who needed help. I don't clean offices anymore. Can't handle being alone in buildings after hours, because now I know that the person hiring you might not be who they seem to be. And that locked room they tell you to avoid, there might be a very good reason they don't want you to see what's inside.
My sister Emma was always obsessed with social media. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. She wanted to be famous online more than anything else in the world. She was actually pretty good at it too. By the time she turned 20, she had almost 50K followers and was making decent money from sponsorship deals. But it wasn't enough for her. Emma was obsessed with this one influencer, @MidnightMirage, who had over 2 million followers. This girl posted these incredibly aesthetic photos, always in low lighting, always wearing vintage clothes, always in these mysterious locations that looked like they were from another era. "I need to figure out her secret," Emma would say constantly. "Her engagement rate is insane. People are obsessed with her." Emma started copying Midnight Mirage's style. Same type of clothes, same moody lighting, same mysterious captions. Her follower count started growing faster than ever before. But Emma wanted more than just copying. She wanted to meet her idol and maybe collaborate. That's when things got weird. Emma somehow managed to get Midnight Mirage's private contact information. I don't know how. She was always good at finding people online. They started messaging each other. And Midnight Mirage seemed surprisingly interested in meeting up. "She wants to show me her favorite photography locations," Emma told me excitedly. "She says she has these amazing spots that nobody else knows about. This could be huge for my career." I had a bad feeling about it. Something about Midnight Mirage's online presence had always seemed off to me. Her photos were beautiful, but there was something unsettling about them. The lighting was too perfect, her skin looked almost porcelain, and her eyes, there was something not quite right about her eyes. Emma didn't listen to my concerns. She was too excited about the opportunity. They arranged to meet at an abandoned mansion outside the city that Midnight Mirage claimed was her secret spot for photos. Emma left on a Saturday morning with her camera equipment and a huge smile. She was supposed to be back by Sunday night. When she didn't come home, I started calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. By Tuesday, I was panicking. I called the police, but they said she was an adult and might just be on an extended photo shoot. They took a report, but didn't seem too concerned. I decided to investigate myself. I drove out to the location where Emma was supposed to meet Midnight Mirage, the abandoned mansion. It was this creepy old place from the 1800s, surrounded by dead trees and overgrown gardens. Perfect for spooky photos, I guess. I found Emma's car parked behind the mansion. The keys were still in the ignition, her purse was in the passenger seat, but no sign of Emma anywhere. I called the police again, and this time they took it seriously. When they searched the mansion, they found Emma's camera equipment set up in what used to be the ballroom. The camera was still on, and when they checked the memory card, they found hundreds of photos from that weekend. The photos started normal enough, Emma posing in different rooms, trying out different lighting, but as the timestamps progressed, the photos got stranger. In some of them, there appeared to be someone else in the frame, a pale figure in vintage clothing, standing just at the edge of the shot. The last photos on the camera were the most disturbing. They showed Emma looking terrified, reaching toward the camera like she was trying to grab it. Behind her, clearly visible now, was Midnight Mirage. But she didn't look human anymore. Her skin was translucent, her eyes were completely black, and she was smiling with too many teeth. The final photo was just of Midnight Mirage, posing alone in the ballroom, holding what looked like Emma's phone. The police investigation went nowhere. They couldn't find any trace of the real identity behind the Midnight Mirage account. The IP addresses were scrambled, the photos were taken at locations that didn't match any real places, and when they tried to trace the account's history, it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere about 3 years ago. But here's the really disturbing part. Emma's social media accounts are still active. Someone is still posting to her Instagram and TikTok. The photos and videos look like Emma, sound like Emma, but there's something off about them. Her skin has that same porcelain quality that Midnight Mirage had. Her eyes look darker, and she's always wearing vintage clothes now, just like her idol. The captions are weird too. They're written in Emma's style, but they say things like, "Finally found my true calling," and "Some opportunities are worth disappearing for," and "My follower count is about to explode." I've tried commenting on the posts, asking where she is, begging her to contact me, but the responses I get back don't sound like my sister. They're too formal, too detached, and they always end with invitations for other influencers to collaborate with her at exclusive locations. Last week I got a DM from Emma's account. It said, "Stop looking for me. I'm happier than I've ever been. But if you really miss me, I know someone who's always looking for new talent. At Midnight Mirage loves working with family." I blocked the account immediately, but it didn't matter. The next day, I found a note slipped under my door. It said, "The mansion is beautiful this time of year. Perfect lighting for photos. You'd look amazing in vintage clothing." I've been getting friend requests from accounts with names like @VintageVanessa and @RetroRachel. All beautiful girls in period clothing, all with the same porcelain skin and dark eyes. When I look at their followers lists, I recognize some of the names, other young women who've gone missing over the past few years. I think Midnight Mirage is collecting them, building her own network of influencers who'll do anything for fame, even if it means giving up their humanity. And I think my sister is helping her recruit new victims. I don't use social media anymore, don't even have the apps on my phone, because I know that somewhere out there, Emma and her new friends are watching, waiting for someone desperate enough for followers that they'll meet a stranger at an abandoned mansion. The internet can connect you to anyone in the world. Sometimes, that's not a good thing.
When my boyfriend Jake and I found the house on Maple Street, it seemed too good to be true. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, huge backyard, and the rent was about half what everything else in the area was going for. The landlord, Mrs. Patterson, explained that she just wanted to get good tenants in there quickly after some previous difficulties. We didn't ask too many questions. We were young, broke, and desperate to get out of Jake's tiny apartment. The house was old, but charming. built in the 1920s with original hardwood floors and those cool old-fashioned light fixtures. Sure, it needed some updating, but for the price, we couldn't complain. The first month was great. We loved having space, loved the neighborhood, loved feeling like real adults with our own place. The only weird thing was how cold the basement was, even in summer. Jake said he'd look into the heating system when winter came. It was Jake who first mentioned the sounds. He'd wake up around 3 a.m. hearing footsteps upstairs when we were both sleeping on the main floor. Probably just the house settling, I'd tell him. Old houses make noise, right? But then, I started hearing them too. Footsteps, but also other sounds. Doors opening and closing, water running in the upstairs bathroom. Sometimes it sounded like furniture being moved around. We'd check in the morning, but nothing was ever out of place. The sounds got more frequent, and they weren't just at night anymore. I'd be home alone during the day and hear someone walking around upstairs. Jake suggested maybe we had mice or squirrels in the walls, but these sounded like human footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, walking from room to room like someone was looking for something. Then, we found the newspapers. I was cleaning out the basement storage area when I discovered a box of old newspapers from 1994. The headline on the top paper made my blood run cold. Local family found dead in murder-suicide. The accompanying photo showed our house. According to the article, a man named Robert Hayes had killed his wife and 2 teenage children before taking his own life. Neighbors reported hearing unusual noises from the house for weeks before the bodies were discovered. The police found evidence that Hayes had been suffering from some kind of mental breakdown, talking about voices in the house telling him to hurt his family. I showed the articles to Jake that night. His face went white as he read them. "This explains the cheap rent," he said. "Mrs. Patterson probably has to disclose this to potential renters. That's why she was so eager to get us in here. We talked about moving, but we just signed a year lease and didn't have money for another deposit. It happened over 20 years ago," Jake reasoned. "It's just a house. The past doesn't change anything." But the sounds got worse after we learned the history. Now when we heard footsteps upstairs, we'd also hear voices. Muffled conversations like people arguing in another room. Sometimes a woman's voice would cry out, or we'd hear what sounded like children running around. Jake started acting strange too. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and just stare at the ceiling, listening to something I couldn't hear. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd say the voices were clearer tonight, and he was trying to understand what they wanted. "What voices?" I'd ask, but he'd just shake his head and go back to sleep. Things escalated quickly after that. I'd come home from work to find Jake sitting in the living room having full conversations with empty air. He'd pause like he was listening to responses, then answer back. When I interrupted, he'd get angry and say I was being disrespectful to the family. "They've been trying to tell us something important," he'd insist, "about what really happened here. Robert Hayes wasn't crazy. He was trying to protect his family from something worse." I started staying at friends' houses more often. When I was at the house, Jake would disappear into the basement for hours. I could hear him down there talking to someone, but whenever I'd go check, he'd be alone, just standing in the middle of the room looking at the ceiling. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in October. I woke up around 3 a.m. to find Jake's side of the bed was empty. I could hear voices upstairs, multiple people having an animated conversation. I crept up the stairs and found Jake in what used to be the children's bedroom, sitting on the floor surrounded by old photographs and newspaper clippings. But he wasn't alone. I could see them. Transparent, flickering like old film, but definitely there. A woman and 2 teenagers, all with the same hollow-eyed look of people who died violently. They were talking to Jake, and he was nodding along like it was the most normal thing in the world. "They want me to finish what Robert started," Jake said when he noticed me in the doorway. "He didn't kill them. He was trying to save them from something that was already in the house, something that's been here much longer than any of us." That's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, separate from the Hayes family spirits, was something else. A dark shape that seemed to absorb light, with eyes that glowed like embers. It was watching Jake with what I can only describe as satisfaction. I grabbed Jake and dragged him out of the house that night. He fought me, screaming that we couldn't leave because the family needs us and the thing in the corner isn't finished. Jake spent 3 weeks in psychiatric evaluation. The doctor said he'd had some kind of psychotic break, possibly triggered by stress and isolation. He's better now, on medication, living with his parents. He doesn't remember most of what happened in the house. But I remember. And sometimes, late at night, I still get calls on my phone. No one speaks when I answer, but I can hear voices in the background. A woman crying, children asking for help, and underneath it all, something dark and hungry waiting for the next family to move into the house on Maple Street. Mrs. Patterson has been calling me about the lease. Apparently, she's already found new renters. I hope they're smarter than we were.
I took the overnight shift at Mike's Gas & Go because nobody else wanted it. The pay was decent, and honestly, how hard could it be? Just sit behind bulletproof glass from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., sell cigarettes to night shift workers, and maybe deal with the occasional drunk buying energy drinks. The gas station was right off Highway 9, about 20 miles outside of town. During the day, it was busy enough, but at night, it was just me, the fluorescent lights, and whatever weirdos decided to stop by in the middle of nowhere. My manager Mike gave me the rundown on my first day. Keep the doors locked after midnight. Only open for people buying gas or if they look genuinely in trouble. Don't let anyone hang around the parking lot too long, and if anyone asks about the back room, tell them it's employees only. "What's in the back room?" I asked. Mike's face got serious. "Storage. Just storage. But some people get curious about it. Don't let anyone back there, ever." The first few weeks were boring as hell. I'd get maybe 10 customers between midnight and 6 a.m., truckers, people getting off late shifts, the occasional person who ran out of gas. I'd watch Netflix on my phone, do homework, whatever. Easy money. The back room Mike warned me about was just past the employee bathroom. It had a heavy steel door with multiple locks on it, which seemed like overkill for storage. Sometimes I'd hear weird sounds coming from back there, like scratching or tapping, but I figured it was probably just mice or something. Everything changed on a Thursday night in November. Around 2 a.m., this guy came in wanting to buy gas. Nothing unusual about him, middle-aged, wearing a trucker cap, seemed normal enough. But when he came to pay, he kept looking past me toward the back room. "You guys still doing the thing?" he asked quietly. "What thing?" "The special service. Mike said you guys had a special service for certain customers." I had no idea what he was talking about, so I just said we only sold gas and snacks. The guy looked disappointed and left, but something about the interaction bothered me. Over the next few nights, I got more people asking about the special service. Always men, always late at night, always looking toward the back room when they asked. When I said I didn't know what they meant, they'd get this frustrated look and leave without buying anything. I decided to ask Mike about it the next day. His reaction was immediate and intense. "Don't ask questions about that," he snapped. "Your job is to work the register and mind your own business. Some things are better left alone." "But I keep asking, and you keep telling them you don't know anything. That's it. End of discussion." But I couldn't let it go. There was something going on in that back room, and these men knew about it. What kind of special service was being offered at a gas station in the middle of the night? A few nights later, I heard the sounds from the back room again, but this time they were different. Not scratching or tapping. It sounded like someone crying, quiet, muffled sobs coming through the steel door. I tried the handle, but of course it was locked. The crying continued for about an hour, then stopped abruptly. I spent the rest of my shift wondering if I should call the police, but what would I tell them? I heard crying from a storage room? The next night, Mike showed up around 3 a.m. He never came by during my shift, so I knew something was up. He had another man with him, well-dressed, expensive car, the kind of guy who definitely didn't belong at a roadside gas station at 3 a.m.
We need to use the back room, Mike said. Take a break. Go sit in your car for an hour. Mike, what's going on? Just do what I'm telling you. 1 hour. Don't come back inside until I text you. I went to my car, but I didn't drive away. I parked where I could see the gas station and waited. About 10 minutes later, a van pulled up to the back of the building. 2 men got out and carried something into the back entrance, something wrapped in blankets that looked about the size of a person. I felt sick. Whatever was happening in that back room, it wasn't storage. I started taking photos with my phone, getting license plate numbers, anything that might be evidence. The well-dressed man left after about 40 minutes, but Mike stayed behind. When he finally texted me to come back, he acted like nothing had happened. But I could hear someone moving around in the back room, and occasionally, very faintly, I could hear crying again. I made the decision that probably saved someone's life. The next day, I called the police and told them everything.